Love often takes unexpected twists and turns, but that just makes the story more interesting.
I caught her, and that was it.
Oh my goodness, I think I'm falling in love with this boy.
I told my husband, if you marry me, you're going to laugh for the rest of your life.
Join us as we continue to bring to life the Canadian love stories of romance, family, friends, and community.
Well, love is the most important thing.
We had no idea that this was a huge, massive production. The two marketing directors had recently been to Disneyland, and they wanted to recreate this magical world.
I have received the gift of life, and because of that, it's given me more inspiration to spread joy and love as much as I can all the time now. I give back as much as I can.
I have actually just recorded the conversation, and now we're doing the intro. So
Yes.
I know it seems a little backwards, but it's important for you to know that because Madison she's been through the ringer, haven't you?
I have. I cried almost from midpoint to the very end. If any holiday episode, this is it. This is the one.
But it is pretty momentous. In this
Beautiful.
episode, we've got Santa Chris and Mrs. Claus,
They're hard to grab.
and you managed to line them up.
I did, yes, through the magic of Yellow Pages, eh? Who sees Yellow Pages?
Well, all I can say is it's a good thing you were on the nice list, Madison, because
Right.
otherwise we wouldn't have scored this interview.
Agreed, and I am just overjoyed for everybody to hear it.
Okay, listener, are you ready
Yes.
for the ride that Madison's talking about having
Yes.
experienced?
I hope nobody cries as much as I did, but here we go.
Here we go, folks. Well, this is a first on the Canadian Love Map. I have never had the privilege of welcoming Santa and Mrs. Claus as my guests, but that's exactly what I'm doing today. Hello, Santa, Chris, and Nancy.
Ho, ho, ho!
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you today, Nancy?
Well, I'm excited because I have never before this known that Mrs. Claus's first name was Nancy.
Often the kids call me Mary, for Merry Christmas, of course.
Oh, oh, that's so great. Can you tell me how this all started for the two of you?
Well, we married as mature adults. My father was visiting from California, and I went to choir practice at the local church. And Papa came along just to get out of the house and listen to the music. And Chris was staying with his sister and his brother and sister-in-law and doing the same thing. So my Papa started talking to Chris, and they absolutely bonded.
Yeah, we had lots of conversations. I work on a farm sometimes, and Nancy's father, worked on a ranch. So we had lots of interesting conversations about ranching and things like that. So Walter and myself were good friends, and Nancy wasn't in the picture. But Walter invited me to Nancy's house to have a dinner. And then I was to take her out to a show after.
Yes. I must tell you about our first date.
Oh, I'm going to need to know, but I'd love to just have a little context because Nancy, you said you met as mature adults. How old were you?
64.
Oh my goodness, that is beautifully mature.
I liked it.
Isn't that great? Okay, yes, the first date. And it's already sounding a bit like an arranged situation. You had a matchmaker.
Sort of, yes.
It seemed that way. During the dinner, Nancy's father invited me down to the ranch to check things out because Nancy was going to be driving him back to California. So he said that Nancy needed
companion.
A companion to drive with.
Not that I hadn't driven this route, for the last 20 years. But
Just in case.
I thought I probably needed a companion. Anyway, so off we go to the our very first date. We're still, I haven't had a date in 15 years or something, and Chris turns to me at the door and says, "I'm not gonna get married again, Oh my gosh. I said, well, yeah, okay. I said, I'd really like to know your middle name before we have this discussion.
He was making sure he was setting your expectations properly
Right,
from the get-go.
right. Yeah, absolutely.
I had been single for about 18 years between my first relationship, and then with Nancy. So I was a guaranteed single guy.
Oh, interesting. And what happened on that first date?
We went to a movie. We had a lovely time. We laughed and joked and enjoyed each other's company, and it was really fun. We didn't revisit that conversation for about 2 years.
And okay, so that prompts the question: what was that conversation like when you did revisit it?
It was all natural by that time.
It was just an organic. I mean, we realized that we really enjoyed each other's company and that we would spend a lot of time together from then on. And there were, all the, we knew each other's background. We knew enough about each other to be happy and comfortable with each other. And so we just said it was more a matter of setting the date at that point.
And I was smart enough to recognize that I was involved with an angel. And I ended up marrying an angel, and I've been blessed ever since.
Okay. Well, that's a mic drop moment there, Santa Chris. I'm very curious, Chris, if you think that this angel that came into your life helped trigger some of the magic that then made you evolve into Santa Chris.
Very, very much so. My first relationship was a rocky one at points. And this one, there was it was day and night. I was coming up to retirement age myself, and unsure where I was going in life. And when we both met, just everything just melted into
place. Yeah.
Into place. Well, I didn't have any Santa Claus experience at this time, and we had just gotten married. And Nancy's oldest son works in the theater industry, and there was a call came out for a Mr. and Mrs. Claus. So
a job interview.
A job interview for Mr. and Mrs. Claus. And her son phoned us up and said, "Are you interested?" And so we said yes.
And so we went into downtown Vancouver, an hour's drive, and sat at a big long table with 3 people from a
corporation.
Yeah. And they were asking, sort of the standard employment interview questions, straight out of the textbook. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What do you, those kinds of questions.
They weren't asking about your inner Claus?
No.
And Chris would answer, about my background. He said things about my teaching career, and I said things about his work with special needs kids, and we had no idea that this was going to be more than a 2-day Santa Claus, Mr. Claus thing. And
So
we had so much fun at this
Yeah.
interview.
we laughed through the whole interview. We didn't take any of their questions seriously, and when we left, we were still laughing in the elevator. And they had told us when we left that they had four other Santas to go through, and they would get back to us.
Oh, so
Before
you
we
didn't
got
know yet
home-
if you had the gig when you left. I
No,
thought they
no,
might
no,
just give it to
no.
you on the spot.
No. Before we got home, we got a call to go to another interview.
A callback.
Another
or-
casting call. Oh, a callback. Yes.
No,
And at that point, that's the first time we realized that this might be connected to a mall, not just to the occasional corporate gig or something like that. So we then had to go to the mall and be interviewed by the mall people. We had no idea that this was a huge, massive production. The two marketing directors had recently been to Disneyland and wanted to recreate the magic of the Woodward's Santa production in the 40s and 50s, and they wanted to recreate this magical world, and they hired 40 elves and
40,
they hired,
yeah. It was a major production.
huge.
We were all instructed we must stay in character the whole time. All my elves had bios of what they did for me up at the North Pole, and for Mrs. Claus. And we had School of Christmas. We had elf inspections.
It was a huge, huge big deal.
Even
Really
in the
fun.
mall at 6:00 at night, every night, it would snow. My elves would all gather because they
Wow.
needed vitamin S. And we would all dance around in the mall. So this was a major production. We didn't know anything at the time. We sure learned fast.
Yes.
So how quickly did you figure out that you were going to love this?
Oh, probably about the third day. Yeah. By the third day, I knew that I had a knack for this.
He's so good with kids, and he'd worked years and years with the Special Olympics program. So he was really good with disabled kids and just being able to. I mean, this man lights up like a light bulb in the presence of anyone under the age of 10 or over the age of 10. he brings out the kid in adults as well as in kids, and it's marvelous to see it. It was such a natural fit that it just happened organically. It wasn't something planned, but it's been a central part of our relationship now for over 20 years.
Yeah, for over 20 years. And what a way to get started in a new relationship and then take on a new persona, a whole new life.
Chris, what was it about Nancy that made her a great Mrs. Claus right away?
I maintained my answer as I married an angel, and she just was a star there. She would be talking with the kids before I did, and she would prep them perfectly for me. And a trick that we learned very fast was that Nancy had to get the kids' names to me. And if I could have a child come up to me and I knew that it was Sally or Billy or Joshua or somebody, their eyes would light up completely.
So much fun.
So we caught on to that right away. And we had a marvelous photographer who had been a Santa photographer for a number of years. So he gave us a lot of hints and told us that we didn't have anything to worry about. And overall, we were still scared, but it was proven that he was totally right, and we just fell right into it.
What were
No.
some of those tips that you got?
Things like always look at the camera, even if the kid is kicking you. Things like watch the lighting, be prepared for 2-year-olds are afraid of Santa. 1-year-olds don't care. They don't process outside themselves so much. 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds are just thrilled to see Santa because they've started to understand more about Christmas. Those kinds of things, and the time, being prepared for the timing, especially with 2-year-olds. There's a momentary
gap where you can slide in and get your pictures, and everybody's
they're scared.
happy. So the photographer and I worked out a system where I'd go off set and come back on set and slide right in there, and we would get our shots. Not that was the most important thing, because it wasn't, but it was an important thing because the parents were there for the shot.
I think about the Grinch, who so famously had a heart that was perhaps 2 sizes too small, and then it grew exponentially and burst out of the box in the animated cartoon. And you, I know, Chris, had a little incident with your heart as well. Can you tell me how you ran into trouble?
Just after one of my seasons, I started to develop a problem with my heart, and I went into the hospital, and they were searching for what was causing my problems. And I went to 3 different hospitals, and they were all telling me that I needed to go home and get my affairs in order.
He was diagnosed with congestive heart failure.
And I went into major cardiac arrest, and they revived me, and I got permission from the head person to get a hold of St. Paul's and ask if St. Paul's, which is a heart specialist hospital, and they sent me there, and my life changed. As I was going to the hospital in an ambulance, I had passed again, and they revived me at the hospital, and we're starting to do tests on me. And the doctor that was going to perform some tests the next morning had come in to see me, and he said that I had to be up and walking around in order for him to do this. So I jumped out of bed, and I started to head to the bathroom. And I made it about halfway there. Nancy was guiding me, and she felt that I was passing out, and she hip checked me and sent me into the wall so that I didn't fall on the floor. When I woke up,
That's quick thinking, Nancy, Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, she knew how to hip check, and that was that saved me from a nose job or two. And next thing I know, I'm being recommended for
Ventricular assistive device.
Yeah, we call it a short VAD system.
It's an external machine with a pump that pumps blood through the heart that's connected directly through the chest wall. And
and I
He
didn't.
literally woke up with that after
Yeah.
passing out.
I didn't have a heartbeat any longer, uh, and I went on recovery, and was waiting for a new heart, and Santa season was coming up. One thing that I should say right now is, in the whole time through all the problems that we've had, I've never missed a season,
That is
not one.
amazing. And did they know when they were dealing with you in the hospital, did they know that you were Santa Chris?
They didn't know until I was there that I was Santa Chris, and they asked me who I preferred, or what name they could call me, and I said Santa, and their eyes bulged out, and they weren't sure. But some of the staff, the nurses, and that come from Richmond, and and
He was on their mantle.
I was on mantelpieces of 90% of Richmond by that time. So I was recognized and well known very fast in the hospital as Santa Chris, and that card pulled me through completely.
I
was
guess the
treated,
pressure was on. They'd better take good care of you.
yeah, I
Exactly.
was treated like a king the whole
They
time.
were so good.
They,
to everyone.
and
They're good to everyone.
yes,
but really.
St. Paul's is the place to be.
It's for
I
St.
can't
Nick.
Yeah,
For
no,
St. Nick.
I can't say enough about St. Paul's.
That's wonderful.
They got me onto the VAD machine, and then I asked if I could tuck it under my suit to do Santa in the next year.
Did you have to pad around it a little bit so it wouldn't be obvious?
Yeah, with my girth at that time, it fit in there nicely. I'm a much slimmer Santa now, but at that time I could hide it under my outfit, and management and all the kids never knew that I had a machine underneath me.
That's amazing. And did that resolve your heart problems?
It kept me alive until January 5th, 2020. And we got a call from St. Paul's. By that time, I'd been on the VAD for over 6 months.
Yeah.
And they had always informed us, you never know when you're going to get the call. But after 6 months, you're not expecting the call.
To get a transplant.
Yeah. And we had finished our season, and we were sitting at home laughing about the season and discussing some of the happy things that had happened. And we got the call, and we both looked at each other completely
stunned
and in disbelief.
That seems like Claus karma to me. You had just completed a season of bringing joy to children and adults alike. You tied up the bow on that Christmas season, and you got a new heart.
Yes.
Incredible.
Exactly. And then I was I went into recovery, and the heart was very good for me. It was a good fit. And I was able to, again, spread love and joy to all the kids again by the next season. The next season was COVID. Mm-hmm. So we did virtual Santa.
And that was a whole new thing for you.
Yes, yes, it was. It was quite an interesting transition. Again, we hooked up with a photographer that knew what he was doing in the tech industry. And with my following, I have quite a following of people, thousands of,
especially in Richmond.
yeah,
but
and,
from all over the Lower Mainland,
yeah.
really.
And
so, how have you continued to do the virtual Santa through the years since that Christmas?
No, we went back to the mall.
Yeah.
Because
a different mall. But...
we went back to a different mall. The mall that Richmond Center, the mall that had hired us, they let the program go.
Ah, I see.
There was quite an uprising in Richmond because where were they going to find Santa Chris? And and we hooked up with Lansdowne Center, and we've been at Lansdowne Center ever since.
We couldn't share the great stories that we do here on the Canadian Love Map podcast without the amazing support of Charm Diamond Centers. They are Canada's largest family-owned jeweler, and they're proud to be putting love on the map. The folks at Charm Diamond Centers are thrilled to be a part of your love story. So visit charmdiamondcenters.com or one of your local stores. Love starts here. You both knew right away, by day 3, you say, that you had a knack for this. I would think that a big part of that is seeing the reaction you were provoking in children and their parents. Tell me some stories about the most beautiful experiences you've had, if you would.
Oh, so many. I mean, we've been doing this for almost 20 years now, and there are touching stories, and there are funny stories, and there are stories, at a certain age, about 10, or maybe depending, 8 or 10, the kids really start to wonder how this whole Santa thing can work because the world is big, and they just not sure that Santa really has enough magic to get around the world and all that.
Mm-hmm.
And
so we've developed quite a number of backstories and things that we can use.
Tell them about Paul and George.
Yes,
Paul and George,
please.
Is a wonderful story.
You tell them.
Okay, these two boys, brothers, and they're just maybe 8 and 10,
yeah.
maybe 7 and 9, and they've been to see us for a year or two, and they come in and plunk themselves down and just not sure I believe anymore. This is just, are you a real Santa?
Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah. So I said to the younger brother, I said, yeah, I'm the real Santa. Are you the real you? and he says, yes. And I says, well, would you like to check out my beard? And he pulls on my beard and he's smiling. And then his brother gets a hair and he pulls it right out. And he looks at it and he says, I'm taking this home and getting it analyzed.
And were you able to conceal the discomfort that must have come with losing that hair?
It was a thrill when I heard that coming out. It was a thrill.
I'm taking it back to the lab.
and they still come to us every year.
They've both graduated from university now,
so with degrees.
We've been part of their family Christmas tradition for years and years and years, and it's still one of our favorite stories to talk about Paul and George.
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that makes me want to get a plane ticket and get right out there.
Oh, I wish you would. That would be so much fun.
Yes.
You let us know if you come to the West Coast.
I will. Tell me about one of the touching stories, would you?
Well, I'll give you a lighthearted one first.
Okay, sure.
As I was getting bolder as a Santa, I started to ask the kids what they thought of the present that I got them last year. Most of the kids just said, "Oh, I loved it," you know. But the one little girl, she looked at me very seriously and she says, "I loved it, Santa, but don't ask me what it was."
She was honest.
Yes, yes.
I bet there were a few that were trying to conceal the fact that they were desperately trying to remember what it was.
Oh yes, oh yes, yes. And that's that's the fun of it as a Santa, to catch them off guard a little bit, and they relax a little more because you've caught them off guard, and it's really wonderful. We have some sad stories. Do you want any sad stories or?
Well, sure, they're real. They're part of Santa's experience. I understand that.
Yes. Santa's had people ask him to get them a job for Christmas. He's had people who know they're dying and have one of the first years at Richmond Center, they did a before Zoom became a popular, or even I think probably before Zoom was invented.
Yeah,
we did a virtual recording thing with a family. The father lived in the Lower Mainland, and he'd been diagnosed with cancer. He knew that he was dying, but he hadn't told his family. So he did a
visit with Santa for his family, and excuse me, that was quite moving at the time.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, it was.
A lady from this was when we were at Richmond Center.
Most of the time that we're on set, we're very, very busy, but I had an opportunity to get out of my chair, and I went out onto the set, and there was this lady that
all
was
by
there,
herself.
all by herself, but she was visibly upset, and she had come from Hong Kong to see her sister, and her sister was dying of cancer, and she didn't know what she was going to do or anything like that.
And her sister loved Christmas. It was just her favorite time of the year. And both of them had
daughters about the same age.
6 or 7, I think, young daughters.
So I told her that I would do anything I could to help her. Well, things moved along quite fast for her as a cancer patient, and we decided that her sister decided that we could do Santa visit up in the hospital with Mom and the kids, so that Mom could have her
Christmas with her daughter, and this was maybe, I don't know, a week before Christmas or so.
So we got up to the hospital. The doctors had and the nurses had given us milk and cookies, and
half the staff on the floor was there watching. It was sweet. It was so touching.
We were able to give.
And Mama was all dressed up and fancy, and she had a glittery top on, and the 10-year-old daughter. Stop that.
Every time Chris gets choked up, Mrs. Claus just seamlessly rescues him and swoops in with the pickup of the story. Yes. I love that. But it's really touching to see how much it is moving for you, Santa Chris.
Oh, yes. It very, very much.
This lady was.
I get involved. I like it. Like Mrs. Claus says, I wear my I wear my heart on my sleeve, and to be able to give her last wish like that, to uh, see her joy blessed us in so many ways. Sorry.
Well, since we're going down an emotional road anyway, I have to ask you, what did the gift of your heart mean to both of you?
Oh,
Because you received the gift of life, truly.
Absolutely.
I have received the gift of life, and because of that, it's given me more inspiration to spread joy and love as much as I can, all the time now in life. The church that we go to, it's a Catholic church, and we spread love and joy there all the time. People know us as Santa and Mrs. Claus, uh, and they know the miracle that I have, and it's I I give back as much as I can. I go down to St. Paul's and visit visit the patients, and I've done fundraisers for St. Paul to do selfies with Santa and raise thousands of dollars for the programs as well.
Santa Chris, can you give people a really compelling reason to sign up for giving the gift of life? And
Yeah.
you know, marking we have that option on our driver's license in most places in Canada, probably, where you can choose to be a donor, an organ donor.
Yes.
What do
Yes.
you have to say about that to people?
I'm a firm believer, because I am a receiver of that, and what a joy it has been for me to have somebody else's heart and be able to spread that love and carry on with giving uh, where that person couldn't give anymore.
Well, you're certainly
So,
putting that heart
so
to good use, Santa.
So please, if you've got any hesitation, please, please, please fill out your donor's card.
Let's go back to that idea of the Grinch's heart growing. I wonder what it is that really makes your hearts grow and glow when you're doing this beautiful seasonal job.
It's the light in the eyes that happens with a 4-year-old who just just truly believes and knows that she has met it's like meeting a legendary person. It's like meeting your superhero. It's like, and that happens with adult,
As well.
particularly adult ladies, but occasionally a fellow too, who still has that ability to touch the magic in their lives or our lives, and it's there's nothing like it. It is just it makes your heart grow.
Yes.
That's
Yes.
absolutely a nice way to put it.
Yeah.
What about you, Chris?
I come alive when I'm in my suit. I am Santa, and I'm prepared to be Santa for everybody that's on site. And because we were taught early to stay in character, that has given us a lot of um, leeway to be Santa to everybody all the time. And when I'm spreading love and joy, when you bring your child to me, and your child is sitting on my knee, and they've got a big smile, because I've been talking with them, and they're finished. They're ready to go. I jump up out of my chair. I come to mom and dad, and I shake their hand or give them a hug and say, "What a wonderful child you have." He didn't ask for anything outrageous or anything like this. So I'm promoting the child to the parent and the parents to the child. And they're all walking out of there with a big smile on their face when they finish coming and visiting with me. And it's a wonderful. It's a wonderful, wonderful feeling. It's very touching. I have moms and dads that cry of happiness and joy, and that's why I have such a big following. Is because I do care and I do love what I do, and it's very obvious when you're around me.
How has being Santa Chris and Mrs. Claus enriched your real relationship?
No, we don't fight ever.
Well, maybe not. Never.
Never, but I think that gave both Nancy and myself a totally different focus point. We discovered that we were able to be that conduit to spread love and joy, and with that power in mind, it's a gift that we have, and so we spread it to everybody, and it just flows.
To be fair, Chris had already done that for 15 years with Special Olympics as well. I mean, he already was able to show kindness and support to kids, and his big heart and his love. We're still in touch with at least one person from that Special Olympics person,
yes.
From his team, Special Olympics team days that still comes to visit us when we're, I don't know, 30 years later, I guess.
Well, the two roles have a lot in common, I would say, because I know that if I was just interviewing someone here today who works in the Special Olympics and talking about their compassion and their giving nature, they would turn it around right away and say, "Here's what I get out of it," because what a rewarding way to spend your time.
Exactly, and I took that reward and passed it on to the kids. The kids are all the way around the world.
May I speak to you for a moment as Santa Chris and Mrs. Claus?
Oh, yes.
Can we really go into character here? And I'll pretend that I'm a podcast host. with a Santa's Little Helper shirt on, by the way, for those who can't see me.
Yes, I love it.
Santa, Chris, and Mrs. Claus, how are you feeling this season?
Santa is feeling wonderful. It's a beautiful season, and we're looking forward to seeing all the kids that come to visit us.
We have been dealing with excited reindeer, busy elves. The workshop is buzzing all the time these days. It is totally amazing. To the last 6 weeks work up to Christmas is really exciting.
Last night, Mrs. Claus.
Oh, that rascal.
Okay. We were out in the pen and we were
feeding the reindeer.
And the reindeer, the only time that my reindeer can fly is on Christmas Eve. So they're out in the pen and they're jumping and jumping and jumping, practicing to fly. And the rascal Rudolph, he jumped over the pen.
And Santa tried to chase him. He went, but Rudolph would go one way, Santa would go the other. It was just so Santa called me out. We went in different directions around the pen. We finally caught Rudolph. I must have been 10 below. My feet were so cold. I was practically frozen to the ground, but we caught the rascal. We took him back, put him in the pen, told him to stay there.
The first thing he does is turn around and wiggle his butt at all the other reindeer and sort of goes, na, 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 na.
He can be a bit of a rascal. He's a sweetie, but oh my goodness.
So that's what was happening up at the North Pole last night for us.
Well, Rudolph's fame has probably, gone to his head, or at least to his nose over the years.
No question.
I'm always curious about Olive, the other reindeer.
All of the other reindeer.
Sorry, that was a favorite children's book when my kids were little. Olive, the other reindeer.
Yeah, all of the other reindeer.
So they don't mind Rudolph taking, top billing.
Well, I often am asked the question, who's my favorite reindeer? And I, like any proud parent, have to include all my reindeer in my statements. And I have Donner and Dancer, and they are good for clear weather. So they lead my pack at clear times. Donner and Dancer, when I want to get somewhere faster, then I put them in charge. But the most important one is Rudolph when it comes to bad weather. When there's bad weather, Rudolph is my choice. Now, Mrs. Claus, could you tell her about when Rudolph was born in our barn?
Oh, a lot of the kids ask how Rudolph's nose, happened, or we have no idea, of course. But the older kids understand or have heard about bioluminescence, so we talk about that. We walked out to the manger area when Rudolph was born, and there was this very strange red glow over in the corner, and we have no idea why, but his nose just glowed in the dark, and he was seen as an outsider.
Yeah, he was shunned, but he became the popular person. He was given a rough time by all the other reindeer, but one day I had to use him.
Perfect timing too.
Yeah, I was giving the reindeer a training session, and Donner and Dancer, they were leading the pack, and we ran into a storm, and they were getting lost, and Rudolph's nose started to glow like crazy. So I stopped the sled and got Rudolph into the lead position so that we could go and weather the storm, and he's been my storm rider ever since.
Oh my goodness. Santa, Chris, and Mrs. Claus, I think I hear the elves in the background working.
Oh,
yes, you do.
Absolutely,
yes, you do.
Stomping around up there.
Well, it's a busy time of year. I totally understand it. We couldn't expect them to stop their production just for us.
True.
I understand.
True.
Let's say one more thing. I just need to ask you, what really to you is the spirit of Christmas?
Showing love and spreading love and joy around the world to everybody. In order to have world peace, or even a thought of it, we all have to work together. And the way to do that for Santa and Mrs. Claus is we go out every day and we make a new friend, and we ask that friend to make a new friend as well, so that at one point in time, we'll all be friends with each other.
Well, that's beautiful. Mrs. Claus, what's the spirit of Christmas for you?
Well, spreading joy and being able to see that spark of magic that happens in people of any age. We have people who visit Santa and myself who are, I think the oldest person we had was 96. and
she had never had a picture taken.
With Santa.
I chased her down in the mall,
but
brought her back.
Seeing that magic that happens in people's eyes of all ages, and being able to let that show and to spread it around, that's the special part of Christmas for me.
Well, I want to say thank you so much to both of you for how you show up in the world for so many people and the light that you bring. And I wonder if you could say a special Merry Christmas to our listeners and Happy Holidays, perhaps, to those who don't celebrate Christmas.
Absolutely.
Ho, ho, ho!
And Merry Christmas to all the listeners of the Canadian Love Map.
And happy holidays! Ho, ho, ho!
It doesn't get any better than that, Santa and Mrs. Claus. I really appreciate you being with me today. And I don't need anything else for Christmas. I'm not asking for anything. I've had the chance to talk to you. I'm good.
No, that's wonderful to hear.
That's wonderful. Wonderful, wonderful.
What a
Thank
nice
you.
thing to say.
And what an honor it has been to have somebody of your caliber interviewing us. So thank you very, very much.
I
Lovely.
think anyone in the world would want to interview the two of you. I just am touched and inspired by the way you are contributing. And I'm sure you know now how much people are appreciating it. And I appreciate you being with me today that much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate that as well.
Thanks so much for listening to the Canadian Love Map. This podcast is presented and made possible by Charm Diamond Centers. It's hosted by me, Nancy Regan, and is produced and distributed by Podstarter. We love sharing love stories of all kinds, and that could include yours. So do you or someone you know have an uplifting tale to tell? Reach out to us on Facebook or Instagram using @CanadianLoveMap or email producer@podstarter.io. We'll be back next week with another love story to add to the map.
You've been listening to a Podstarter production.